Mach 3, give me crew show on 2, 3, and 4.
Line 1, X1.
6, 3. Mach 3, give me start line 2.
5 electric. Mach 3. Line 2, Mach 9.
Mach 3, give me start line 1 and crew show on 7 and 9.
Line 1, crew show 79, Mach 9.
Yeah, do something. I hate weapons.
Super Ops, line 3, red ball, avionics.
Super Ops. Line 7 is code 3 for Flickas.
Fuck.
Okay, so today we're joined by somebody you guys, I'm sure you've heard her podcast before and seen her on the videos before. This is Ashley Grogan, the creator of The Diary of a Mixed Woman. She joined us for the Women in Maintenance discussion. She hosted a sexual assault, sexual harassment discussion that I was a panel member on, that she was gracious enough to share the audio with me so I could share it with you guys. This topic really came about in like the middle of like a Thursday night or some shit, where I texted Ashley. Like, I always feel like I have these great insights that nobody else had, and I texted Ashley and I said, hey, why do you think the Air Force promotes volunteerism? And I thought she was going to be like this person that was like, oh, I can't wait to hear what Chris says. And she fired back with, is that a fucking rhetorical question? And I said, because I don't think it's really about volunteerism. She's like, no shit. And I'm like, okay, so I don't have any great insight here. So I wanted to invite her because she's probably ahead of me on this type of conversation. So she's the perfect person. So thank you for joining us today.
Not a problem. I'm excited.
So the thought came down to, I talk about volunteerism, kind of it's sprinkled throughout my blog, where I really kind of beat up, like in 2017, Luke Air Force Base did like a whole day where the wing commander directed everybody to go out into the community and do, like, it was a Monday and you were not allowed to be at work. It wasn't optional. In fact, I think they went down to like the sports arena and did like a pep rally and then went out into the community, and they're all wearing like coordinated shirts, that were specific color. And then when I was at Holloman Air Force Base, they had like the day of caring, where you would have teams and projects and you would go out into the community. And my volunteerism in the Air Force was typically stuff that I was really passionate about, and it very rarely made it onto my EPR. So I was really struggling with the whole volunteerism piece, because it felt like when they did those big days I always saw the volunteering as the Air Force is trying to quantify your character, and they're trying to condense down what your character is, so that way they can capture the most altruistic and noble type of good and giving people, and you want to promote those. And it really, for me, I couldn't figure out, because I'm not as smart as Ashley, I couldn't figure out why you would do a broad day of caring, because then you're going to completely water down it as a discriminator of who's of good character. And that's when I realized that volunteerism has nothing to do about measuring character. It has everything to do with public relations, public affairs for the Air Force, right?
Yeah. I mean, the whole airman concept to me is a crock of shit. And like, so when I was at Aviano, we didn't have a whole lot of those big like events where you go out like as a group into the public. But you could tell the people that were doing it just for bullets, and like whatever volunteering opportunities they had just for bullets. And then you could tell the people that were doing it because that was something that they, like you said, like, I enjoy doing it. This is something that I want to do. And I was that person. I volunteered because it was something that I wanted to do. But I've always, I would say after the first award that I got, I won like Airman of the Quarter at one point. And after that, I realized how much bullshit it was. Like, it's just not real. Like nobody cares at all. And putting that one bullet on your EPR does not really say that you're a whole, like you envelop the whole airman concept. I think it's all a crock of shit, and it's a PR stunt.
Yeah, it is. And the more I kind of thought about it, the more I realized it's really fucking insidious, because most of the time they want that done on your personal time, when they're already, taxing your personal time with a regular work schedule, with a weekend duty schedule, with PT that was removed as on duty time in like 2009 or 10 or whenever that was, right? Where now
Yeah,
it's
especially
commanders
in
should give an hour and a half, 3 days a week. And all the commanders are like, well, you want me to fucking fix jets? You want me to do PT?
yeah.
Yeah, I don't blame them for fixing jets over PT, but it's ridiculous that the requirement's still there. But it's like, in the military, in the Air Force, and certainly in aircraft maintenance, they chip away at your time constantly, right? And that was something that I kind of experienced when I came into the civilian sector. First of all, no one really gives a shit if you volunteer or not, right? Like, it's if it's something nice, it's something nice. But they also, what I noticed, like when I worked at two different places that did that, they were really upfront that we want to show the community that this corporation cares. So it's like, oh, okay. So let's not pretend like you're a piece of shit human being if you don't fucking volunteer today. You're doing this, we're going to pay you. And it was always during like work hours. We're going to pay you. And really what you're doing is you're building community relations, and that's all it
Mhm.
is. In the military, I mean, fuck, I like to think that I have great insights and I can see like above the fray, but I was completely suckered into the volunteerism sort of mindset for 20 years in the military, plus what I've been retired for 2.5 years. The light bulb went off in like early August for me. So, um, you know, and it's really disconcerting because, a lot of those work bullets are teamwork driven bullets, right? Like, you're talking about 8 hour fixed rate, fuck, man. It's really disingenuous when crew chiefs are citing 8 hour fixed rate, because probably 80% of the breaks on aircraft are avionics related, in which case, what the fuck did a crew chief really do to help the 8
Right.
hour fixed rate? But it's all teamwork driven stuff, right? And a lot of times the way EPRs are constructed, where you pick this flashy heavy maintenance task here, and then you'd pick this maintenance stat here, and even though they were at opposite ends of the calendar year and they're only tangentially related, I'm gonna marry them up into this fucking Franken bullet and shit it out on an EPR, and it's so goddamn good that it's going to go on every fucking EPR, because everybody was doing the fucking motors, everybody was doing the ADGs, right? And that's fucking the absolute
Yes.
reality.
Oh my God.
And then what happens is,
pisses me off.
right. And then what happens is the 1206s are decided almost exclusively by, self-improvement, which self-improvement is always kind of not necessarily a nebulous thing, but it's more malleable. And then when it's the volunteerism, it's what did he do, and it's always focused on, and that's the discriminator for who gets an award, what you talked about before.
Yeah, exactly. And I also like the thing that bothers me about it, because like you got the whole team effort thing like you're talking about, right? So let's say whether it's the team effort bullet for the FMC rate or the 8 hour fixed rate or whatever the fuck, and then the same thing applies to volunteerism. You're undercutting someone who did major work.
Yep, you are.
Right. And so you're sprinkling a little bit of salt for everyone to have, but like this guy had all the flavor. You know what I mean? This person worked their ass off outside of the military and doing things in their community, but it's damn near a mandate, almost a requirement for everyone to have a volunteer bullet on their EPR.
And I would argue,
then you're a piece of shit.
And I would argue the guy that didn't fucking volunteer probably carried the mission way fucking more, because he was totally burned out. He had nothing left to give, right?
Absolutely, for sure. You've got people that are badass, work hard on the flight line or whatever job it is that they have, because this is an Air Force wide issue,
right?
Whatever job it is that they have, they're a badass or whatever, and so they don't make time for volunteering because they're focused on their job, which is honestly, if you in any meeting that you sit in, mission first, mission first, mission first, mission first, mission first, they beat that into our heads. And so then but then when it comes time for the EPR, well, you need a volunteer bullet.
Well, what's funny is they bash mission first into your head to make sure it's never dropped. But in order for you to get considered for promotion, in order for you to gain some of your own personal goals outside the mission goals, you have to give up your own fucking time.
Absolutely.
Or else you're not going to fucking get it, which is absolutely coercive. which is, you know, and it's what's really hard. You know, people that work for me. I mean, I used to have people come up to me and be like, "Sir, I'm really kind of kicking around the idea. Should I stay in or should I get out?" I'm like, "Man, you're really talented. You should fucking get out because you'll make way more money on the outside." That was a frequent conversation. Like, you know, 36, 26, 18. They're supposed to say like senior CEO should like really encourage people to stay in. I'm like, no, you have too much talent. You need to fucking go.
Yeah.
So like, you know, it's like the volunteerism is so overvalued for what it actually is. And what it does is it incentivizes hard workers to stop working hard because they're not going to reach their personal goals. They're not going to get rewarded for their efforts. Never mind the fact that in aircraft maintenance, typically the harder work you are, the more QA exposure you have, the more likely that you're going to have a IMDS that's signed off shitty or a forms error. And of course, all we ever see is fucking errors, right? Whereas the person that goes gallivanting off and does volunteer stuff and can't ever seem to, and I'm not, you know, I talked about it, I think, in the flight chief discussion, but I had a woman. She didn't work for me. We worked together a lot. Her name's now, I think, Susan Murdoch, and she is an absolute. She is what I thought the Air Force was looking for character wise. She volunteers like every weekend. It's never for, you know, a promotion. It's always because she just loves to take her time and give back. But I think that type of character is really the exception, and it should be rewarded. But the problem is every careerist piece of shit in the military knows they need to check their stupid fucking volunteer box, and that's all that matters. And then now you can't figure out who's who. And I always thought it didn't make sense, but the reality is the Air Force doesn't care about your character or your altruism. They care about, are you making the Air Force look good? And what's exceptionally painful there is, what if you hate where you work? Right? I mean, I'd like to think I know my audience pretty well. There's probably a lot of people here that are fucking miserable at work, and now think that the Air Force wants you to go out and put on a face and show and show that the Air Force is a great organization. It has so much capacity for giving and so many resources and time that these people, you know, are going out into the community. And what you're doing is you're trying to create this narrative that the Air Force is it's a fucking Disney ride. It's happy and smiling and it's a small world and all that bullshit. And behind the scenes, it's fucking grungy ass water that's been dyed blue. Yeah. And all the machines are fucking 50 years old and falling apart. And, you know, that's almost worse because it's like, you don't want to like misrepresent your experience, but you can't go out there and be like, yeah, I'm doing this because I need to get promoted. And it actually kind of sucks.
And that's the thing also. That's another thing that bothers me is because it like, they tell them mission first, and then they're like, oh, well, you need to go volunteer, and you're like, so, you know, what is it or whatever, and then how am I supposed to go and put on this face for this organization that treats me like shit, and this is the only way that I'm gonna, you know, I'm just here so I don't get fined type of shit. Yep. You know what I mean? That's exactly what it is. And, you know, I worked my ass off volunteering, and I worked my ass off on the line in every job that I had. But I look at these awards, I'm looking at them right now, and they did nothing for my career. You know what I mean? Like, they did, like, it didn't put me apart. When I was put up for Senior Airman Below the Zone at Aviano. When I tell you I worked my ass off to get the awards that I got, and it wasn't for the awards. That's not why I did it. I didn't even know that I had been put in for an award. I like to do stuff. I like to do things outside of, and at the time I had just gotten divorced from my first husband and I was single and I didn't have anything to do. And so I was like, yeah, I'll be a part of the booster club. Yeah, I'll set up this event. Yeah, I volunteered at AADD on a regular basis for a couple of years because drinking and driving, not in our squadron, was a problem. It's Europe. Yeah. You know, they don't really have open container laws and stuff like that. So, you know, I volunteered a lot, but like, you know, and I worked my ass off for those things, and then one of my flight chiefs, who, this is a conversation for another day, but he was one of those good flight chiefs that got fired because he was a good flight chief.
Right. Heaven forbid.
Yeah, he's the one that put me in for these awards. He's the one that put me up for BTZ and all this other stuff. And I was like, I mean, that's not why I'm doing it. He's like, I know, but you know, you're doing a really good job, and I feel like it should be rewarded and all that. Cool. And then I found out later that I basically got taken out of the game for BTZ because the other unit just came back from deployment.
Really?
And they were giving all the stripes to those guys. And I wasn't upset. I was like, I had ROTC before I joined. You know, I was a 4-year enlistee. I knew when I was going to put on senior airman anyway.
Right.
So I wasn't like upset about it like a whole 6 months early. Like, who cares?
Yeah.
But when I found out the reason why, I was like, so anybody else that's done something for the squadron doesn't get put up because of this. And so is volunteerism important, or is it not? You know, is the whole airman concept important, or is it not? You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
especially if it's situational. If it's situational, that's really signals like if you're really trying to measure the character, then it wouldn't be situational. It'd always be
Exactly.
a very sort of static, and it would be what it was. It would have the same value every single time.
Right.
But if it's malleable, then that means it's negotiable, which means it's more about, you know, what they want it to signify. So I want to go back to when you were talking about your awards and you looked at your awards, and it reminded me of something that I had an absolute fucking epiphany with when I was a production superintendent at Holloman and I was on midshift. And as Ashley knows, and most of my listeners know, I do my absolute best not to name names when it's something negative. I'll name names when it's positive. But the people that were at Holloman with me, they'll quickly figure out who I'm talking about, and it is what it is. So what? So we had this senior that was a fucking moron. And, you know I use that term a lot with a lot of people I serve with, but this guy was legitimately stupid. We had a jet crash. When I say crash, it was at 10,000 feet. The pilot ejected, and the jet went into the dirt. So it wasn't like a skid; it was a fucking crash. And he was in a meeting. This is actually not related to the conversation. I'm just trying to articulate how fucking stupid he is. He said that we need to have the seat and canopy removed to get the seat data recorder, and we need to hook up a dash 60 to get the volatile memory from the D-flick. And it's really important for everybody to understand that the jet was in pieces and the pilot had ejected miles away. So that person made senior, and this is the whole point of the story. I remember when I would drop off the morning package in his office.
Sorry, I'm still tripping on
Yeah. Like, he said it out loud. Do you know how fucking dumb you have to be to A, think those things and not understand how a jet works when you've been in the Air Force working on F-16s for at least 20 plus years? But to think that they're such good ideas, you say it out loud to many other subject matter experts. There was like Eagles in the room. There was a colonel. He was actually not invited back to that accident investigation board. They're like, I'm sure you want to spend time with your family or something. So, I would drop off the morning package in his office, and this is what really made me realize that the award system is fundamentally broken in the Air Force. I would see awards all over the wall, and I would see it from like 1993, airman, senior airman, staff sergeant, tech sergeant, and it's like, and this is where I came up with, I call it the McGee theory of linear quantum intelligence. Okay. And I've told this to a few people and I blow their minds, but you're also much smarter than me on some of these things. So it may not blow your mind, but I'm going to do the exercise with you anyway. And you might not get impressed, but my listeners might. So I want you to think of how old are you, Ashley?
I'm 29.
Okay. You're 29. I want you to think of 9-year-old Ashley. Okay. Imagine 9-year-old Ashley standing next to you right now. Are you smarter than 9-year-old Ashley? Not like intelligence capability, but do you know way more than fucking 9-year-old Ashley knows?
Yeah.
Yeah, right? Makes perfect sense. Now, that senior said those words out loud. He was dumb as fuck after being in the Air Force for like 24 fucking years, right? That was the smartest he's ever been, how I viewed him. It stands to reason that he has not become more stupid as time goes on. He has learned and gained experience, which means as stupid as I saw him in that moment, that was the smartest he had ever been in his life, barring a head injury or some sort of dementia, right? Does that make sense to you?
It does. I love it.
Which means
I understand what you're doing now.
Means when he was getting fucking awards in 1993, logically he was much more stupid than he was when I observed him in 2015. And that's when I saw, like, if you're a piece of shit and you're an idiot, yeah, you're like, I fucking got you on this one, didn't I?
You did. That's good. I love it.
Yeah. I'm gonna write a research paper on the McGee
Please.
linear quantum intelligence matrix. I know I say I make a different name every time I say it, so we'll see what I can get to stick. But you know, if you're a piece of shit and you're a dummy, and you might be able to trick one supervisor into giving you an award, or you just happen to have a really good year, or your supervisor is somehow dumber than you, or whatever it was. But when I saw consistent awards from 1993 to the present, plus he was a senior and he eventually made chief, right? I know it hurts your soul. It's like, okay, so that's not a one-off. He didn't trick somebody. We have a fundamentally flawed awards program where someone of this diminished capacity to get lauded throughout his career. And plus, obviously, you know, a lot of people understand what the Dunning-Kruger effect is. You know, he was too dumb to know he was dumb, which is why he, you know, was so outspoken with his horrible fucking ideas. But that goes back to maybe he was checking the boxes for volunteerism and stuff, right? In which case, maybe he was giving the Air Force what it wanted, which, you know, time and time again, you see it over and over and over again. Appearance matters more than substance. We care more about what things look like than what is actually going on. We, you know, same reason why there's a suicide epidemic and it's impossible for me to get data, which I'll be doing a big talk on that because I got a FOIA request back from AFPC that was disappointing. But it's why they protect their image, and it's why, you know, image and appearance and concealing fault and concealing all these things is the number one. I mean, that's where the whole point of the article "You Need a Voice" comes from. Like, let's fucking attack the Air Force's image. And one of the first ways we do it is we expose that the Air Force extorts volunteerism out of an unhappy, low morale force because the Air Force weaponizes that volunteerism against the general population to portray the Air Force in a better light than actually exists. So the real question is, if people had the available time and they were happy, volunteerism would come probably fairly fucking naturally. You wouldn't have to quantify it on an EPR and make people perform these actions in order to promote, right?
Yeah, when I was talking to Pedro, he was like, I didn't join the Air Force to volunteer. I joined the Air Force to be a mechanic.
Yep.
Like, that's my job. That's what I want to be here for. Like, I don't want to, like, if I don't want to volunteer, it shouldn't be a requirement for me to make rank. It shouldn't be a requirement for my work center or whatever the fuck. And like, it would always crack me up too, because like, who needs a volunteer bullet? And then you send those 3 or 4 kids to go set up like the change of command ceremony chairs or some shit. You know what I mean? And then they would put that down. I'm like, so what's the point?
Yep.
You know what I mean? Why am I putting this on my EPR? And how is that setting me apart from anybody?
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, you're just saying that I did something just so that I can have a decent EPR, or, you know, I have really strong bullet points everywhere else except for this. So let's not even, you know, when it comes to my EPR and it comes time for promotion, you're not even going to look at that. Yep. You're going to be like, yeah, but everything else on the EPR is great.
Right.
And then you're going to have somebody who has a 100% fantastic EPR from top to bottom, who works their ass off on the flight line and or pro super or expediter or whatever the fuck. Right. And then, but they also take their, you know, whatever free time they do have to go volunteer because it's something that they enjoy volunteering for, you know. Like, I knew this girl that worked at soup kitchens. Yep. And that's something that she's done with her whole family. That's part of, like, that's what their family does on a regular basis. And she works at soup kitchens, and, you know, she lost an award package because this guy was like 6 times better. I'm like, so then what's the point of putting the EP? Why is it even on there? Why is it on the decoration? Why is it on the award package? Why is it on anything?
I had she was going to join us for the women and maintenance conversation. Unfortunately, she couldn't make it, and I think I talked briefly about either in the sexual harassment assault conversation or the women in maintenance, that her mom came up to me on her last day and thanked me for taking care of her. But when she worked for me at Luke, she was from New Jersey, and it was right after Hurricane Sandy.
Yeah, it was Sandy. I got stuck in Baltimore during that.
When Hurricane Sandy came through, I was her flight chief. No, I wasn't her flight chief, but I was sort of her flight chief. We had that combined like office A and B flight. And she had come up to me, or she was coordinating leave like right afterwards. And I was like, well, what are you taking leave for? Because she used to travel a lot. She's like, well, I'm taking leave to go back to New Jersey for a couple of weeks. I'm going to volunteer for the cleanup. I was like, that's really fucking impressive. And maybe I didn't say anything at the time, but maybe 2 months later, her EPR was being written, and I noticed that the EPR had like the typical, top 4 car wash bullets and whatever. And I said, hey, I found her. I was like, hey, what the fuck is this? Why haven't you put that you took your own personal leave and you went up to New Jersey to help clean up a hurricane that devastated your hometown and stuff? She's like, I didn't do that for the bullet. I'm like, I get you didn't do it for the bullet, but that is like more noble than anybody of these other fucking volunteer bullets are. She's like, I don't want to cheapen that by putting it on my EPR. And we never did, as far as I know. If I remember correctly, we never did. I respected her wishes. But I think that also really goes to show that even she recognized that the box checking volunteerism on her performance report, she did not want to tarnish her actual altruism with that type of moniker attached to it, to somehow, because it's very much viewed that volunteerism on your EPR is a selfish thing, that you did that not to do it, you did that to help yourself.
Exactly. And that's what I was saying earlier, like you've got the guys that are going to do it so that I'm here so I don't get fined, and it's basically damn near a mandate or a requirement to put it onto your EPR. And then you've got people like her that are exceptional and they deserve the praise, but they don't want it. And so you put that generic bullshit on there. And again, what's the point of having it? What's the purpose of that whole airman concept? Have to have volunteer bullets, period. Like, it just has to be on there. If you don't, they'll kick back your EPR.
Well, it goes back to the at the very beginning of the conversation, the epiphany that I had that you had formulated years ago. It was, if we put this on the EPR, we can get the entirety of the force to go out into the community and do volunteer work. And that's going to overall make the Air Force look better, regardless of whether the Air Force is better. And
it's all about public relations with the local communities.
Yeah. And never mind the fact that how many active duty people have been unable to join me on this podcast because they don't get approval, because they don't know what the questions I'm going to ask. So it's not necessarily a direct, hey, you can't go on there. It's, I wouldn't go on that podcast because he's like an asshole and he badmouths the Air Force. Maybe I don't badmouth the Air Force. I paint the Air Force with as accurate a brush as I can. And often I'm focusing on the shit that's ruining people's lives. So that might be bad mouthing. It might not. But, you're talking about, we have, much like the article, You Need a Voice. We have a public affairs apparatus at every base. At Air Force level, we have, recruiters that are giving out fucking tactical flashlights, and you have NASCAR logos, you have the Thunderbirds, you have all you have this massive fucking PR marketing apparatus. Its sole job is just to make the Air Force look better than it is. And I wrote a piece about a guy named Gerard Rogers. Shoot, I can't remember the title of it. I'll put it in the details for this podcast. But it was, if you treat your people fucking fairly, you don't need marketing, because when they leave the Air Force, they will go back to their communities and go, hey, I fucked up, but they treated me fairly. Or, hey, they care about people and it's a good place to go and the benefits are great. Like, I just can't imagine how much money we spend to make the Air Force look good. I imagine if we just allocated that money towards like taking care of our people and making the Air Force good, we wouldn't have to fucking spend any money on marketing at all whatsoever.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Yeah. If you just did better.
Right. If you just treated people well and fairly, and recognized their humanity, then they would leave the Air Force, or they would go out, or especially if they had the bandwidth and the time, they might actually want to fucking volunteer because they're good people anyway.
Right.
When you're getting hammered on 10 to 12 hour shifts for weeks and weeks at a time, and like we've seen some of those text messages shared from the Army where they're calling you in off of fucking family leave for somebody dying, or they're I've seen some text messages and some
that shit pissed me off, that one that you're talking about.
Or how about hey, people are testing positive for COVID and you still got to fucking come into work. Like, if we treated people better, we wouldn't need to create this mandate for you to go volunteer and fake like you're fucking happy. And
yeah, you know, and then you wouldn't have what I call disgruntled veteran syndrome.
Yeah. Oh, that's fair. Yeah.
Because if I wasn't treated like government property, right? If I wasn't treated like a tool that you check out, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If I was treated like a human fucking being, I wouldn't be disgruntled. We wouldn't have to have these podcasts.
So what's the difference between what we're talking about and describing compared to Vietnam POWs being put on TV and asked if they're being well treated and happy? I mean, I know this is some fucking thick hyperbole I'm throwing out.
But it's fair though.
Right.
It's fair because I'm
just like a prisoner. Yeah. Go ahead.
You know, like everyone's been burned. Everyone's been burned in the military. Okay, you might have a couple guys here and there that was just like loved their Air Force career, whatever the shit. But I know more people that are angry while they're active duty, while they're on leave. You know, every conversation that you have outside of work is about how much you fucking hate your job. And then once you get out, you know, I'm talking about, you know, some of the things when I had to explain some of the stuff that I went through as a maintainer to like the now one civilian friend that I have. She was like, what the fuck? And I was like, yeah, like that's just what it is. They don't care. They don't care. And I can't tell someone that's thinking about joining the military that, yeah, you have all these great opportunities and you can do this. And, you know, they give you time to volunteer. Like, I can't. Yeah. Why would I do that? It's a lie. It's a fallacy. Why would I do that?
Yeah.
And something I wanted to talk about that you brought up at the very beginning with your story is because I've said it several times, it's damn near mandated, but like being voluntold.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Being voluntold for like I said, the change of command ceremonies or the highway cleanup things. Rosie, sorry,
you're good.
My dog's eating a bone. The highway cleanup stuff, like they made that almost mandatory for everyone at squadron staff when I was working up there. And they were like, yeah, once a quarter we have to do this. And I was like, what do you mean we have to do it? And they're like, yeah, it's our turn or whatever for this year. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. I volunteer quite a bit outside of this job. And I'm really busy. I was at work anywhere from 12 to 14 hours a day. And that's not even including PT that I had to run. Yep. You know what I mean? And like, I was a programs manager, but I was more than one program manager. Right. And I was voluntold to become a resiliency training assistant, which I ended up loving and became a master resiliency trainer on my own volition, you know, and wanted to be a part of that. I became a green dot coordinator because I wanted to do those things. And I was like, I do plenty for the squadron. Yep. I don't need to go clean up the highway with you. I've got shit to do. You know, and they're like, well, you need to. And I was like, I'm not doing that. Because first of all, I have to go to PT in an hour. So I'm not going to go. It'll be harder for me to go do something with you guys because I'd be there for 10 minutes and turn right back around and come to the base. Yep. And I went and talked to the commander and I was like, I didn't say I'm not doing it, but I was like, hey, I don't have the time to be a part of this.
What's interesting, besides the guy that fucking made the gigantic circus of the day of volunteering at Luke, very, very rarely will a commander like lawfully order you to go do volunteerism. And the fact that they're not inclined to do that really shows that it's not a kosher sort of scenario. And that's why it's wholly coercive. Like, it's mandatory. Okay, so it's mandatory. Are you ordering me? Oh, no, I'm not ordering you. Okay, so is it mandatory then? Well, you know, you're an NCO, and then they'll drag out 36. I expect you to like set the example. And so when I was at Luke, we at Phoenix International Raceway, every time there was a NASCAR season, there was huge volunteer opportunities. I remember as a section chief, I would literally they would prioritize doing that volunteer work over the flying schedule, and they wanted
what?
I fucking promise you, I'm not exaggerating. There'd be times I was like, I don't have enough people, and I got 5 people working at Phoenix International Raceway, because the reality was we had like it was subcontracted down to our private org, which is also problematic because you're doing on-duty work time for a private, it's like the top 4 is not a government sanctioned thing, but someone's collecting a government salary by working at a volunteer thing for a private organization. There's a huge, and the private organization is pulling resources away from the fucking mission. But what was interesting was if they fell short of like having 6 people available, the company that they contracted with would be like, okay, well, we will give you a temp body, and it would cost like the cost of 3 or 4 people. So eventually it gets to the point, like if we only had 3 people show up and we got 3 temp bodies, we would have to pay money to this company for those 3 people to volunteer all fucking night long.
Shut up.
And then what happened was I don't know.
What year was this?
This was, I was either a tech or a young master. So between 2011, 2013 is when it was.
So I was in hot training the end of 2010, and on one of our school days they told us that we had to go to the NASCAR event and volunteer for it.
Yeah.
So I just realized, because I completely had forgotten about that, but we skipped a day of class. They made us all, the whole training, all of them, like we were down there.
Think about, if you don't know anything about the military, you don't know anything about the Air Force, but you read enough of this blog, you listen to enough of these podcasts to know that maintenance is severely hurting, with an increase in suicides, with an aging fleet, unable to meet MC rates. And then you hear that maintainers are being voluntold to take time away from work, trying to get the fleet better and of course, this is from 2011, 2013. And I've been retired for 2.5 years. How long have you been out of the military, Ashley?
A year and 2 months. So
it could very well be that all of this has radically changed in the last year, and this no longer happens. And anybody that can, testify to the fact that we're wrong, please feel to leave a comment or anything on this video when I post it to the page. But I suspect that the same pieces of shit that were cramming this down people's throat in 2011, 2013, 2015, they're probably made more rank and they have more power to cram it down people's throats. What was interesting was we stopped doing that PIR bullshit when I was on top 3 when I was made master, and we were, it's always a squadron Christmas party. There's like this bill that you have to pay. There's like $7,000 or some crazy amount of money to pay for it for the squadron, and we were short. And they were like, well, we could do these car washes, or we could do this, or we could do this. I was like, well, how much fucking money do we need? They're like, oh, we need, it was like, we were like $3,000. I'm like, how many people do we have in the organization right now? And it was like, oh, we got like 35. I was like, can we all just pay $100 fucking and not do any fucking volunteerism and get this fucking bill paid, so I don't have to like chase down all this fucking process? I don't think I said it. Someone said it, and I was literally already getting out my fucking wallet. I was like, I will buy my way out of some bullshit volunteering any fucking time.
Yes.
I got more important shit to do. And it's ridiculous for me to lean on my people and guilt them into volunteering just so I can have a Christmas party that none of them, by the way, you have to volunteer them to fucking go to the Christmas party anyway.
Yeah, dude. Like every major event that's sponsored by your organization, whether it's big Air Force or like your the maintenance thing, what is that, the MPOY? The MPOYs, the Christmas parties, all that shit, like you're literally forced into going to those things.
And actually, I'll say it's not true all the time. When I worked for my great leadership team in the 308th in 2013, I think when I was at Holloman, I came back to Luke to go to that unit's parties. Like I left my shitty unit at Holloman's party to go to Luke party and like celebrate with them and stuff, because it was a good place to be. So that I didn't have to be voluntold. So the trick is, if you treat your people well and they want to be around you, you're going to have no shortage of people that are happy and bragging about the Air Force, and they'll want to go to all your fucking parties, and they'll probably contribute some money to get it done. But we are running out of time. I figure. Yeah, I know. I'm trying to keep it short, but I also, like I was talking to Chief Tibbetts on episode 8, I'll probably be doing probably a longer conversation on careerism. And obviously what we were talking about today was just one of the many sort of influences that make people into careerists, which, I think that is probably one of at the core problems in the Air Force. Our inability to promote the right people, and people chasing only promotion for value. I will definitely invite you back for that.
Loved it. And I would love to be a part of that.
And then I'll be with Chief Tibbetts as well. I'll probably get Stromsky as well. I'm sure he'd be interested in it. But I guess the overall message is volunteerism, you're working for Air Force Public Affairs. It has nothing to
Fact.
do with them wanting to make sure you're a good person. They want you to make the Air Force look good on your fucking time, and they're going to
Yep.
guilt you and withhold promotion until you fucking, play nice for your captors. As fucking hellacious as that sounds, I think it's true.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think that there's much more to say about it.
All right. Well, I appreciate you joining me today, and thank you everybody for listening and supporting the podcast. You can find it at 20yearsdone.com. Please leave ratings and all that stuff. Also, if you want to keep up with what Ashley's doing, I recommend you follow the Diary of a Mixed Woman Facebook group, where she is, using her platform and her voice to affect positive change in the world, as you see here. And if she's as smart as she is on all the stuff we talk about, I know she's smart on those subjects too. So thank you very much. And Ashley, thanks for joining me. Adios.
See you later.
That's the show. I can't thank you enough for reading, listening, and watching and supporting everything that I've done with 20 Years Done. If you're new to this podcast, I recommend you go to 20yearsdone.com or find us on Facebook at facebook.com/20yearsdone.